Hello everyone, it's Omar Oakes, editor of The Media Leader. I caught up with James Rooke, president of Comcast Advertising, to talk about why it's time to act, that is ACT, why committing to accountability, choice and transparency is key to ushering in TV's next phase of growth. I hope you enjoy. Hello, I'm Omar Oakes, editor of The Media Leader, and I'm pleased to be joined by James Rooke, who is president of Comcast Advertising. Explain what your role as president of Comcast Advertising involves.
Sure. So Comcast Advertising, the best way to think about it is made up of three different assets. There's a media asset, which is a US-based ad sales business that represents Comcast inventory across the Comcast footprint across about 66 different markets. Comcast Advertising is also accountable for stewarding Comcast set-top box data. We license that data in privacy-safe ways to rise the tide for the industry, for example, with measurement providers like Nielsen and Comscore and VideoAmp, all in service of improving cross-screen measurement. And then the third asset is our technology business, which is FreeWheel. And FreeWheel, as you know, is a global tech company that powers the majority of the programmers, broadcasters and publishers to do their unified ad decision. And we also have sort of buy-side assets as well, including beeswax, so sort of technology, data and media, which make up Comcast Advertising. Comcast Advertising sits within the Comcast family alongside NBCUniversal and also sort of Sky Media. So if you think about the broader Comcast family with Sky, Comcast and NBC, Comcast Advertising sits in sort of the core Comcast business, but works really closely with NBC and Sky, both powering their streaming businesses from an ad decisioning standpoint with FreeWheel. And also in the US, we partner really closely with NBC on a number of things. For example, many agencies come to us and say, hey, we want to work with you in a more simplified way across your media tech and data assets. How can we do that? And so we want to ensure we can sort of simplify access to the assets we have on behalf of the marketer.
Yeah, so amid all of that, I mean, that is a pretty big remit. Amid all of that, why have you chosen to talk about these three words that you champion: accountability, choice, and transparency? What's the issue behind those three words?
If you think about where we are today, the traditional media companies will, for 5, 7, 8 years plus, be having to manage a really difficult transition. And that's a transition from a traditional linear TV business to an all IP streaming business. So we're going to be living in a hybrid world for multiple years to come. And that hybrid world is difficult. Ultimately, we'll get to a place where instead of transacting on demos, we're going to be transacting on audiences. Instead of transacting on spots, we'll be transacting against impressions. Instead of everything being manual, it'll be much more automated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But underpinning those simple words to say is the reality that as you manage that sort of transition, that Venn diagram overlap between the linear and the streaming business, is you have different tech stacks, you have different processes, different policies, etc. And so simplifying the ability for a marketer or an agency to be able to buy multi-screen TV is hard. Layer on top of that, sort of the increasing stringency of what's happening from a privacy regulation standpoint. Layer on top of that, data signals that are getting deprecated, whether it be cookies or through browsers, as an example. And the challenge on a standard day is hard. What big tech has done really well is have an easy button. So if you want to buy scale across big digital platforms, it is much simpler to do that against a target audience, and it's simple to do. And the second thing they've done really well is demonstrated attribution or outcomes. And those are two things that the traditional media ecosystem has to solve for. I say that.
So where's your easy button, and how are you showing that you're delivering on outcomes then?
So that is the challenge ahead. So the operational complexity is such that it is not as easy as it should be. And despite the fact that it's well understood that premium video and sort of brand advertising is an incredibly effective marketing engine, a ton of credit is being taken by bottom of funnel providers for the value that is being driven by top of funnel tactics. So it it is the responsibility of the ecosystem to be able to bring sort of the best of traditional TV, trust, transparency, scale, etc., brand safety, alongside the best of digital, which is automation, better proof of performance and attribution, better data enablement. If you can bring those two worlds together, then I think you're able to bring a new dawn for the top end of the sort of the premium video marketplace in terms of maintaining its position as the as sort of most effective market medium for brands. I say that, but then there's one other challenge, and that other challenge is the fact that as the worlds of traditional TV and digital collide, the standards by which the traditional media ecosystem are held to are higher than those of the digital tech platform.
You use the words level playing field, and you think there needs to be more of a level playing field. What needs to happen?
Well, it's simple and it shouldn't be controversial, and that is that as the traditional ecosystem and the digital tech platforms provide solutions that are video based to brand marketers, they need to be compared on an apples to apples basis. Right now, the traditional media ecosystem provides full transparency into where every single impression delivers. It is fully third-party measured. The same is not true for the digital platform companies, where they provide insight into a subset of where delivery happens, and third-party measurement happens on a subset of inventory. So you have different rules that apply to different worlds. Now, the challenge with that is that ultimately you start to have impressions being delivered into places that the brands don't want them to be delivered. You get into brand safety issues. You get into buying inventory that you didn't want to buy, as an example. And so there isn't a apples to apples cost comparison between the two. And so our belief is that having a level playing field in terms of proper transparency that is applied equally to all parties will provide a better way for marketers to be able to make decisions about where they allocate their spend. Now, on top of that, as I said earlier, the traditional ecosystem has to solve for the easy button, the ability to buy, optimize a campaign in flight, report at the back end, and demonstrate proof of performance. Both have to be true at the same time. But if the traditional media companies just demonstrate execution excellence against the hard things that need to be done as the worlds of streaming and TV come together, it won't be enough, because they'll be operating on a playing field that is different. And so we're simply saying that that there needs to be equal transparency on where impressions delivered. And that's something that the Video Advertising Board is sort of pushing hard in the US, and sort of calling for that to be the case.
But ultimately, all of this is funded by the advertisers. My question to you, I guess, at the root of it is, how much do advertisers care? And by advertisers, I put the big advertisers that NBCU, you have upfront discussions every year, the big global advertisers who really care about brand safety, etc., and the SMEs. And you talk about outcomes. The platforms have done a very good job, haven't they, of actually selling, well, you don't actually need to know how much this is measured at a granular level. All you need to know is put a load of ads on Google search. It's going to work for your business. The same for Facebook, the same for Instagram. So how do you, if a whole cohort of smaller, growing advertisers have been raised on being hooked on outcomes as opposed to caring about a level playing field, how do you change that conversation?
Well, we're changing it now. And we're shedding a light on the fact that, as you know, there has been allegations made by companies like Ad Analytics in terms of advertisers, I think 1,000 different advertisers over 3 years buying what they thought was certain inventory on YouTube. And the reality was that it was allegedly running on long-tail networks under the Google Video Partner Network, and the same Ad Analytics company exposed the same, again, all allegedly, in search, saying that there's over $10 billion that is going into where it shouldn't. So the question, for the marketer is, I'm sure some of that risk is sort of baked in, but I think it's becoming increasingly clear that as the big tech companies push harder into the TV space and go after TV dollars, that they should be held to the same standards, and this basic transparency and accountability sort of needs to be there. Again, that said, from a proof of performance standpoint or an outcome-based measurement, that is critical, and there's no question on that. The challenge that the traditional ecosystem has to take on is being able to demonstrate the incrementality of the tactics that it provides and how that incrementality flows down the consumer purchase funnel. I think the biggest brands in the world will tell you that they know the majority of new sales comes from those that haven't bought their products before, and investing in the long term versus sort of short term, bottom of funnel chasing quarter to quarter isn't sustainable. But the platform companies have done an excellent job and should be credited for what they've done in terms of making it easy to buy and demonstrating outcomes. My point is that the traditional ecosystem can do the same, particularly as it moves on to everything being executed over IP, which will take multiple years. But again, needs to be transparent and accountable, all in service of a marketer determining where it spends that dollar and getting the most effective use of that dollar.
Yeah, well, of course, connected TV being on loads of app-owned platforms as opposed to the walled gardens and ecosystems that we've become used to in open market display buying.
That's right.
It's going to be a very different conversation going forward. Thank you so much, James Rooke, President of Comcast Advertising.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
If you like this video, please subscribe. The Media Leader is the UK's leading source of analysis, opinion and data for people who work in advertising and media.